This is the Parents in Sport podcast. Amazing guests, honest conversations, topics that matter.
Welcome to season 4 of the Parents in Sport podcast. I'm your host, Gordon McClelland, and I'm delighted to be joined today by Larissa Mills. Larissa, thank you for joining us on the show.
I am excited. I want to go to UK, but this will do.
This is as good as it gets.
This will do.
Yeah, fine. That's great. Now, look, I'm particularly excited because I think today's topic is the bane of many parents' lives, and that is this topic of devices and the use of social media. So I'm looking forward to really getting into that. But just before we start, can you just tell our listeners a little bit about your background and your story and career to date?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think I started out always wanting to be a coach, and I always wanted to be a teacher. And so I went that route for years. And I coached rowing and volleyball and track, and I was in the schools. And then I started to want more. Why are their brains doing this is what I always used to ask. Why is this learner a faster learner than this learner? Why is this learner a more effective learner than this learner? So I did more of a master's of science of education. It sort of taught me how the brain works and how our children's brains need to learn. And actually, the more that they're distracted, the less they learn. Because our brains have this amazing thing called short-term, long-term memory. And a lot of the kids, before phones were created and allowed in school, they were absorbing information 3 times faster than they were when we introduced phones into the schools. So it's actually taking longer for us to teach the kids because they can't make the information go from the short term, read it, see it, write it, talk about it, the information, and make it go into long-term memory. So now they're behind because they can't make it compute to long-term. So when they go to study for tests, they're not doing well. And the newest GPAs in North America for boys say that they are tanking, which is really important. And how I got into this was, why are my students changing their behavior? There's phones in my classroom. What is this thing? Why am I allowing this in my room? And I instantly removed it and put it in a box. And my classes were happy. My students were happy. The learning was great. And then I started to notice a change in the athletes. They couldn't run as fast. They were distracted. I would give them a drill and we'd have to break the drill down from 4 pieces to 1 again, then to 2. And I noticed that this was something that my colleagues in sports were also having an issue with. And then it got worse. And I was always around the phones and thinking it's got to be something to do with them. Parenting is also, it changed, right? So I had to look at all these factors. And overall, if I kept the phones in a toolbox before practice, right? So we can get into the mindset of being a volleyball player at the moment. This all goes to when they close their minds to everything else, they can focus. Our practices became more effective again. But I see coaches who don't control the phones or monitor it at home, and they're struggling. So a long story short, I started to do this and teach this to teams, reducing phone time, adding balance, helping coaches. And then we started to see a real change in kids' coping mechanisms. And we started to see a real change in their behavior, like they can't cope with anything or manage, or they don't have problem-solving skills. So I started to teach this to teams. And all of a sudden, one coach was like, "Can you come do this with our team?" "Sure. Can you come do this with our team?" And then another person's like, "Can you build me a school for our athletes?" And I'm just like, "What?" So I did. So I built a school that's a hybrid model. We're teaching it to students, we're teaching it to teachers, we're teaching it to coaches. And by adapting to the new tech world, we're actually protecting the kids. And that's what's important. And showing parents how to do this at home.
Yeah, and I think that's amazing because we're all desperate to make sure this next generation of young people are successful and as successful as they can be. And I know you're massively passionate about this. Now, when we're out and about and we're talking to, you speak to a lot of parents, obviously the use of devices, or what I should say is the overuse of devices, is a real challenge to a lot of parents with their children. What are you seeing in your work? I mean, what are some of the things that are getting thrown up around this topic, just generally?
Generally, I find that parents want to help their children and want to do well and want to do what's right by them, but they just don't know how to do it, or they need a little bit of a handhold to try. That's what I'm finding. When we work with teams, I have no problem with parents are quite on board the phone thing when we start the protocols at home and the routines at home. And it actually makes them aware of their phone time, because what's happened, Gord, over the past, if you can believe it, not even since 2007, the introduction of phones, kids are on their phones 9 hours a day, right? And if adults are on their phones 5 to 6 hours a day, I'd like to know when the bonding, when the dialogue, when the hugs, when the time is being spent on raising the kids is happening. Because right now, the psychiatrists and pediatricians say that it's not. It's a very, very neglectful era of kids, and they're going to be raised quite silently. So the more we can reduce children's phone use, especially getting it out of their rooms at night so they can focus on their sport, but just that's when we introduce our mental skills at night, so they can do it in their room at night. And okay, you don't have your phone, but here's what you do. But that's how we help parents, is we give them a list of 10 strategies to try at home and help your athlete. And they usually do a great job. Like, we don't have, because they just needed someone to help.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah. And do you know what? And I completely see that in our work, because a lot of people say, oh, well, how is this possible that you're basically going out there to tell people how to parent? It's like, well, no, I'm not.
No.
I'm trying to support parents, but actually most people that you meet are just really thrilled that somebody has taken the time to make sense of what is a real challenge for them and actually provided them with some support. And actually, they love to buy into it. They're really keen to try something new. They just need the ideas and the strategies and some thoughts. And perhaps in some cases, and I include myself in this, just a greater self-awareness around a particular topic, which is why I'm obviously thrilled to have you on today, because I'm basically going to ask the questions that I would find as a struggle as a parent. So
I still find struggles as a parent. You see the bags under my we still struggle. This is just to help. I mean, I'm still learning. I thought I was going to nail parenting until tech came into this. And it became more challenging for me as a parent with tech, way more challenging. And I'm not the only parent challenged, but at least I have some, I'm trying new things all the time. And I've got a pretty good formula down that the kids have to follow, and we have expectations. So that's kind of what we've focused on. What were you saying there?
Yeah, I think the thing around, devices is we know that we're not just going to be able to say, oh, well, just ban them and get rid of them, because they're there now and it's part of their lives. And so it should be. So it's actually how we maximize their use in the most positive way that we can, as opposed to just always looking at it as being, I guess, completely negative. And I know we spoke, offline a couple of weeks ago about this, and I think that sort of rallying cry that you put out to parents, I know that I said to a group recently that we're not our children's friends. And whilst they still live in our house and they're younger, we do have some control over what we do. Now, if we remove their devices for a period of time, whether that be in the evenings, as you say, but before they go to bed, or we decide that we want to remove them over family meal times, or we want to have a day in a week. I mean, I heard the other week a fantastic thing called a 1995 day. And I was talking to some sports this week about introducing it. I thought it was really cool, where you could make a phone call, you could type into Microsoft Word, but that was it. That was your only use around devices. And I think ideas like that are really cool. And I do think parents, even though our kids, as you say, they'd be really grumpy, they'd probably want to call us all names under the sun, we have still got that control, and we can make that choice. And I think that is a really just a good starting point, that particularly with our youngest kids, we should be able to have some control with the support that hopefully you're going to give in the next 40 minutes or so, to actually just say, actually, this is how we're going to operate.
And it's interesting that you say that, because this isn't really about control. It's about raising children who are going to be productive, healthy adults. And a component of that is teaching them how to integrate technology in their lives by keeping also the social balance. And that is a must now. Looking at the newest statistics of suicide, depression, and anxiety, we have a real issue. And parents are the number one determining factor of their child's outcome, right? So if we can help our children to live healthy routines, healthy phone lifestyles, and learn why we need it. I don't know if I ever told you this, but I educate parents and athletes, coaches, showing them how the brain works. So we show them how the brain responds to the dopamine and the cortisol, and how it kind of sabotages everything you just worked out, everything you just did at sports. It spikes your heart rate, drains your adrenaline again, and you're tired. And you do this for 9 hours. and I show them what it looks like in your brain and how your nervous system gets spiked. And you wonder why you're tired. You wonder why you're moody. You wonder why you're craving sugar. These are all the things that your brain reacts to. And if we can at least reduce this surge and balance it out through the day, I like to get athletes to check their phones maybe in the morning, once at 9, 12, 3, 6, and only for a few minutes. Just go through whatever social media we agree upon is healthy for you. And when I mean healthy, I mean, what's it doing for you? Is it draining your energy, or is it giving you energy? Is anyone draining your energy, or are you being right? Are you given energy? And I think when we show them the control, no, you do it. You decide who's good for you. You decide what's good for you. Our athletes and our parents, they're going to town. They're happy to do this because they feel in control of it again. Right? That's so important to feel.
Oh, absolutely. So, I mean, you've touched on a couple already. So let's go back to the parent thing. How can we support our young people to make better choices around their device usage? You know, what are we trying to do? You know, kids coming home tonight, we want to be good. What are some of the things that we can start thinking about?
Sure. I would start with these top 3. First of all, we must educate children how to use a phone as a tool. It's a tool. So let's educate them on the safety features of it, the dangers of it. And I mean, I had several kids, I'll be in a class with them, and all of a sudden we're going through their social media and there's 70 people following them who are adults. That is very disturbing. And of those, I usually find one pedophile. On every child's phone, I can find 1 or 2. And if we're not checking their phones to do a check-in to make sure that our child's conduct and the children they're on the phones with conduct, that's like at recess time, or when kids are at your house, you're just sort of monitoring them and checking them. When you are dealing with a world that's online, you have to go and check it, because you wouldn't believe what I find on there. I mean, and as you get older, it becomes more and more worrisome, and you get into more and more legal issues, as well of inappropriateness and illegal activity. And the number one, I couldn't believe this. The police, I went to a talk. The police said that Snapchat is the number one leading criminal app in social media, because that is where the kids are. That is where the kids buy drugs. That is where the kids meet. That is where the trafficking happens. That is where the grooming and luring happens. It's everything right there in that app. Isn't that scary?
Yeah, massively scary, because I know my son's on Snapchat, and hopefully he's not doing any of the things you've alluded to. But that is scary that that's the case.
That's the number one criminal point for activity. The other thing is, let's set rules and standards at home for the phones. So I always like to make sure the kids are sleeping well at night, because sleep determines mood, energy, how you show up the next day. So no phones in the room. Actually, we have a rule that we've used for a lot of our athletes and students, is no phones off the main floor. And it's interesting because, as I'll say this, nothing good ever happens after midnight. Well, nothing good after 10 o'clock on a kid's phone is good.
Yeah.
So keeping them on the main floor with you, at least you know they're not doing or taking inappropriate photos or any of those things. So they're right there. So they can't get in to too much trouble, but you would know if you checked the phone. So I like that rule of main floor only, docking the phone at dinner and having scheduled times where they go on their phone. And unfortunately, here's something interesting. Random use of a phone leads to really poor work habits and poor work ethic. And we're really seeing a decline of that in students in schools. They just don't want to do work. Everything's too much work. And when they're on their phone, they're using their phone to solve their problems instead of looking for things. Their brain's not looking for how to solve problems anymore. So that's one of the reasons why I like to dock it and have scheduled times for it. Also, just be checking it randomly, and teaching your kids their own self-worth. You know, making sure that your kids have confidence and mental skills and able to handle what is going on these phones, because let me tell you, their brains aren't developed till 25. I mean, even me, I don't know about you, Gord, but there are some things on the phone that I don't want to see, and I find inappropriate to see or offensive to see, and I'm not an easily offended person at all. So I don't know if I'm ready to see what we're seeing. And you're asking a 12-year-old to look at it? Their brains can't even cope with abstract thinking at that point. So
Yeah.
our kids are seeing these things on phones and they don't know how to look at it, view it, interpret it, or analog it in their brain. They respond to it very impulsively, which isn't the best reaction. So going through your kids' phones and the social media is another thing I would do. Setting up, you're in the UK, so I don't know what child providers you have, but in the US, they've come out with a dynamite phone called TrueMe or Pinwheel. So only the parents control what the kids have. They can put their friends in, they can put their browser in, they can control it all right there. And it's wonderful because it works at the level of the child's brain. It's kind of cool. And I really wish in Canada we could get it, because iPhone would be done. Because you're basically handing a kid, here's a party for 500, learn how to use it. And within the end of the week, they've got 1,000 followers and they're 9 years old. That's not, I mean, that's not possible. So we have to be very wary of that, and educating them about the social media, who's following who, what does it mean? And unless you see the person's whites of their eyes, you don't add them. You don't add a person unless you know who they are in person. But they don't do that. They just want to be popular. So they literally add and add and add and add people, and they don't care who they are. Meanwhile, they've just added multiple people who are trying to invade your space and get pictures or whatnot. So those are the few things. And the other thing was, it's some parents, you can put a software on your kid's phone. You can put a locator on your kid's phone if you want to know where they are. I remember when we were kids, we used to just ride our bikes, and my mom would just walk around the neighborhood till she found my bike or call somebody. And today parents don't want to do that. So they put a locator on their kid's phone.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. In those days,
right? Then you know where they are.
Yeah, those days seem like a long time ago. I think our generation get told to stop talking about it because we always wax lyrical about those times. I'm sure there were things that were wrong. Yeah, they were, but I'm sure there were things that weren't the best as well. Where I think it's funny with kids today.
We had so much independence. We grew up faster in our era than the kids are growing up now.
Yeah, and I think in some ways, I think we are, but in a healthier way. Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Well, one thing you've touched on, because I think this is really important, because I spend a lot of time with parents looking at the building blocks about, why kids are successful, how are they being successful, and two of the big sort of components around that are their own self-worth, but also their ability to communicate well. That's communicating with parents, potentially with teammates, potentially with coaches, with people who can support them, because we know that's a key part of developing resilience, is the ability to go and seek support and talk about it. But actually, some of the device usage, social media usage, is not doing anything for those two key skills.
It actually delays those two developments, right? Many of the teachers say that they're seeing children who can't speak at 4 years old, where 10 years ago they could all speak and have a certain level of vocab, and now they're behind because all they do is watch videos. So the two neurosurgeons that are studying this find it fascinating because the linguistic part of the brain in children is not firing as much as it used to. That's pretty, I mean, I heard that and I took my kids' iPads away. And I only let them watch TV, because if you're going to watch a show, watch it on the telly, right? Watch it on the, so that was disturbing. If that's what was your question?
Yeah, just around the fact that obviously the device use of social media in terms of promoting self-worth and communication skills. It's not just the fact that we're saying that the bad things, it's actually the fact that they're having a detriment on these key building blocks that would allow them to be really successful as young people and as adults.
Yeah, we're seeing that if they don't know how to communicate online, I have some very successful athletes who are being interviewed in front of cameras and don't know how to look at someone in the eye, don't know how to express themselves, because they just emoji everything. But they don't know how to vocalize it in person. And this is a real issue. I even know some kids who are signing contracts, professional contracts, who have never signed a signature before. They don't know how to hold the pen. Like those are skills that they need, right? And mostly the social skills is part of the emotional intelligence. That's pillar number 4. And they're really not motivated to, because they're like, yeah, I don't have to. Everything's on the phone. I don't need to talk. But your coach needs you to. Your friends need you to. If you want to have a job in this world, you're gonna need to. Communication is now the number 1 assessed skill in the corporate world.
Right.
And now we're devising mental skills assessments for athletes, because big time NCAA and professional sports don't want to have athletes that don't have mental skills anymore, because it's too hard to coach them. They might be talented, but if you can't cooperate, communicate, concentrate, and compromise with your teammates, there's other people who will and can. So, yeah.
I mean, I think the communication thing's it's a massive. It's always been a huge one for me. I'll never forget my dad, and he used to, slightly illegal. He used to take you to the pub when you were 16, when you were underage, not to drink, but he used to take you, and without him realizing what he'd fundamentally done was he taught you to speak to everyone at different ages, coming from different walks of life, and have the ability to hold a conversation. I mean, he would never have known that. Maybe he did. Maybe he did know that at the time. But I have no doubt, I hope I've got some abilities in some of the things that I've done. But ultimately, the thing that's worked for me is that I've been able to travel the world and always be able to talk to people and fit in some capacity. Admittedly, it's been
a real skill. That's a real skill. Before it was everyone did it, so no one thought it was a skill. And today it is a sought after commodity amongst the corporate world and in sports. I mean, how crazy is that to think about?
Yeah, and that's sad, though. That's quite sad, isn't it? Because what we're saying is something that was pretty normal is actually now become a rarity, a real challenge.
Like when a kid says to me the other day, I saw this kid, Gord, it was so cute. He's like, "Oh, hey, Coach Mills, how's it going?" It was a 16-year-old boy. I'm like, "Oh, hey, so-and-so, how are you? How's your day?" He goes, "Oh, good." He goes, "I'm rolling," because he had his roller on his back. He goes, "And I'm doing my practice." And I'm like, "Okay, good boy." And he's like, I'm going places." I said, You are. I'll see you there." And it was just like this, because I had coached him, and he has still got those habits, the routines. He's still following everything, but he was social and engaging and funny. And then he told me a bad ice cream joke. And it was just really social and fun, right? And that's what I want to see, is this confidence that they can talk to anyone again, right?
Yeah.
Because we're really raising a very silent generation.
Yeah, absolutely, and
Yeah.
I'm all behind that. Now, one thing we've seen in the world of sports, which I think is alarming, and I've had a number of parents who've asked
Yeah.
about this, and obviously it's easy because you can criticise those that have done it, and obviously there's those that don't do this and then
Mhm.
criticise others. But we've got some parents who have set up social media accounts for their
Oh,
children.
right.
Yeah,
Okay.
in terms of that they're younger, they're underage, they shouldn't be on social media, but the
How
parent.
old are we talking? How
Oh,
old?
I think we're talking anything from 9 to
Oh
14
my
for
God.
Pete. Yeah, so
Oh my gosh.
yeah, so we've got parents who are running these accounts to show their children in sport doing well, what it looks like,
And
manage.
that's exactly where pedophiles go. They just look for the photos. They just look for photos, right? And if your child's photo is up, they're going to look at you first.
Yeah,
That's what the police. Yeah.
I mean my gut on all of this is obviously there's a reason that we don't
Mhm.
allow social media, but below a certain age. So why are you creating it or finding I guess, a loophole in terms of your children having one? But also, I have spoken to some athletes whose parents have set up these accounts. They've got a little bit older, 16 to 18-year-olds, and
Yeah. Yeah.
they're absolutely devastated that their parents have done it because there was no conversation with them about whether it was acceptable. There was no dialogue about whether that's what they
Oh.
wanted as a digital footprint across the rest of their
Yep.
lives. Um, what's your gut feeling on this? Because you must have,
First,
obviously, I
yeah.
mean, you must have it as well, but
Yeah.
it's.
So we do professional accounts for our athletes with the permission of the parent, but we also do it in a safe way if the child is 16 or above. Not a lot of facial photos in the profile photo. It's just a jersey or a team photo or something like that. It's made private. First of all, the accounts are private. So if you even want to go find this athlete, they're pretty much going to have to direct you to it. So there's ways of making it safe. To those parents who have kids 14 and under, they really don't need them. No one's really looking. It's all about the stats that you're putting out in your sport anyway. This is more of a parent thing than a child thing. So I mean, I don't think my kids are all athletic. I have never done that, nor will I. So it's all based on the recruiters and the scouts and what they're doing out there for themselves anyway. And if they want to do an account, the first thing I would do is I always ask, do you want to do this to any of our athletes or students? And here's a list of guidelines, which are safety guidelines, psychological guidelines, and protective guidelines to follow. Things to post and not to post, right? That's a big list because the parents just want to post the trophies of the wins or the goals, but that's not what the scouts and the recruiters and the coaches want to see. They want to see work ethic. How do you translate that to paper? They want to see that you're resilient. How does that translate to this account? So we have ways in which we can show in photos and in posts, you're getting up at 5 a.m. to work out, post the alarm clock, right? There's ways of showing them you're a team player when you're high-fiving your teammate and you're hugging them on the sidelines. You're a team player. How are you going to show them that you're vocal? So there's all these things that the other part of the sports world want to see, but the parents don't understand what the recruiters are looking for. So that's when it becomes complicated. That's when it becomes dangerous. And that's also when it becomes frustrating for the child who doesn't want it.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think for us as parents as well, again, we're highlighting the wrong things when we spend all our
Oh,
time with
yeah.
parents highlighting the building blocks. Actually, what we're putting out there is all we actually value is a specific outcome. And one of the saddest things I've heard recently, and this was really sad, was a young footballer with his dad, sort of not pillars of the community, but everybody knew who they were. They knew their son was in a top football club. They used to go into the pub, and everybody used to greet them as the top footballer, and everybody always used to just talk football. And he had one of these social media accounts, and it had all the glory and all the success.
And what's the age, Gord?
Yeah, well, this has been on. I mean, the boy now is 16, but rolling back from that, about a year ago, he was released from his football club. So this whole world that they built from a young age and everything, he's been released. Not sure whether he wants to continue. Probably not quite good enough anyway to continue. The saddest bit of the whole story, then, having talked to his parents, was that they could no longer go into their local pub because they couldn't hide from their shame and embarrassment that they'd put it all out there, they'd put it all up there.
Was there an incident?
No, was there an incident? Just not good enough. Just released from a specific program. But I think that ability to know. Yeah, well, it is. I think probably if you haven't done all the things that we're talking about, because now it's the unraveling of all of those bits that are causing the problem. Which, just a sad story, but again shows the danger, particularly in sport, of getting too carried away too early. But also then not just that, actually then telling the world about it whilst you're going through it. There could be really negative ramifications, both for you and your kids.
Mm-hmm. And it's that, I mean, the more I see this woman, she's putting her 10-year-old a profile up for a 10-year-old. There's even 11 and 12-year-olds that have profiles, and I'm like, who is seeing this? Because I can tell you, scouts and recruiters are not. They're only going to listen to the stats that are put up, right, and seen. And most kids around here don't get picked up, unless you're some generational player, not too much younger than 14. I see thousands of accounts for 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. And these kids, and Gord, as well as I do, the math in sports does not lie.
No.
1 in 300,000 may make it. 1 in 200,000 may make a scholarship. And I think the math is very telling. Do I stop supporting my child? No, but I'm not going to give them, I'm very honest. And in words of, Pete Lowe, we all kids have potential, but are they going to stick to it? Are they still going to be there when they're 16? Are they still going to have work ethic? And has it all improved mentally for them?
Yeah. Those
are the telltale signs of success, right? That get added to the talent. And parents don't even know that yet. They don't know anything at 12. We don't know anything at 12.
No, we don't. No, we do. We know. Right? No, we're trying to make educated guesses, and we often fall flat on our face. And I often will be very open and said some of the sort of national title under 13 sides that I coached, I would have been so wrong at predicting who was doing what at 18. And I got an awful.
Isn't that interesting? Don't you think that that's kind of cool though? Like there are athletes that I would have thought would have made our provincial and our national teams, and yet the kids that I thought it was all the talent, but the kids that had the work ethic were the ones that made it. They had intestinal fortitude. They had everything up here, and then they applied it to their game. And instead, all these kids were just burnt out by being pushed into the system, and they all left by 16, which 43% of all kids globally, I believe, quit their sports at 16. That's a lot of kids.
Yeah, we don't have the magic potion, and I've said a lot on this show that if we did have that magic potion, we wouldn't be sat here today. We would be very wealthy, and we'd probably be in the Bahamas enjoying ourselves. And we just gave it to kids in bottles. But we're just that's not going to happen. Now back to the phones.
Yes,
I think you touched on this earlier, but obviously, children won't necessarily know that their phone is having a negative impact on their performance. And why is it? I mean, I had a lovely chat with a couple of boys in my car a couple of weeks ago where for the last hour and a half before we got to a venue, the devices were away, because I don't believe it's a good thing that you're looking down at a device and then expecting to get out of a car and perform. Now, I don't know the reason why I don't think that's a good idea. I just know that it probably isn't. So I made that decision. So, what are some of the things that we actually know where we can talk to our kids and say,
Yep.
actually, you're making this choice to use your device, but
Yep.
did you know that actually, in terms of your athletic performance, this could be hindering it, and this is why? What are some of those things?
Well, that's very interesting. And I'm glad that you asked, because the first thing we like to do is teach them about, remember how we said about their brains and that their brains aren't developed, and say, okay, here's a scenario. You're going into a very important game. Let's say it's a really high level football game, and you're going on your phone before it. What does that do to your brain before the game, before you even arrive? Well, it does two things. A, spikes your heart rate, spikes your nervous system. So already you're in fight or flight mode, whether you like it or not. So this is a psycho-emotional reaction, right? Our bodies are reacting to what our nervous system is seeing. And right before we go in, we have now spiked our heart rates, and we've made ourselves more nervous, and most kids can't calm themselves down. So we recommend that there's no social media 2 hours before a game, but we also have, if there are athletes, they're probably already on a social media that at least supports them, and they've limited their time on it, because there is no positive effect of looking at your social media before a game. What if your boyfriend, girlfriend breaks up with you?
Yeah.
Why are you looking at that? This is all after. It's very hard to manage these thoughts before. Maybe you looked up a test. Why are you checking? No, we shut our phones off an hour before games. We do not go on. It's our mindset now. We get them to do their pre-game practice mindset work, their routines, their rolling, their warm-ups. It has to be a routine. It has to be, right, to get into that mindset. And social media throws these kids off, because they also, at higher levels, they look at the fan-based social media, which is the silliest thing to do, because fans are not the athletes, or else they'd be sitting where you are.
Yeah.
They're just fans. But they can be very cruel, because no one's making them accountable for what they're saying. So to your point, it is not healthy to go look on social media before a practice or a game. It really is not helpful, because many of the children cannot interpret what they're seeing, what they're watching, and what they're reading, and how it gets interpreted in here. Now, we can get some athletes to the point where they're filing away things and they have to deal with them later, but that's much older, from a lot of older children. But I mean, it really does a number on you in your nervous system. And we have a hard time with kids with butterflies. And butterflies is really just upset tummy, because our brains are worried.
Yeah.
So we do visualization, we do feedback, we do all of these things, but it is really detrimental to your performance to go on social media before. And in many of the professional sports, they go on after, but once we actually show them why and show them what it's doing to their brains, which it takes away their confidence. It takes away your identity a little bit. And how is a 16-year-old supposed to get this an hour before practice and deal with that?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, you're not ready to deal with this. So avoiding, no, I want to say we're limiting, so that we can help our children figure out, interpret, manage these things that they're seeing on social media, so that we can help prepare them for their sport, or their dance, or their music, or their acting, whichever it is they're performing.
And yeah, right? and I think I read somewhere as well. I mean, we've talked about the negative impact there emotionally on the body, and the spikes within that, you know, just prior to game, prior to competition. But I'm sure I read a piece of research that said that overusing devices, they may start to be able to now show that it's leading to slower reaction times, for example. And
their minds become, and if you're going to ask me about the physiological changes, we know now that there are more headaches, there's more injuries, because their reaction times are not the same. It actually slows your brain functioning slightly into a fog more. There really are no positives to extended phone use. And the other thing I wanted to say about social media use is that here's the sad fact, and this is for adults too. 7 out of 10 times we check our phones, it's a negative feeling. So why do we do it? We either see envy, we're not good enough, we're not strong enough, we're not thin enough, we're not smart enough, we're not pretty enough, we're not big enough, like for our sport. So we go on and we basically see how we're not this person and we're this person. And a lot of these young, beautiful people cannot figure out how this comparativism actually affects their confidence and their self-doubt. So all they do when they go on social media is they go down this rabbit hole, and then it's up to us. It takes a day or two to get them out of the rabbit hole and back up again. So it really does plague an athlete, and not just an athlete, anyone.
Yeah.
Anyone.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, having gone through this episode today, I think, the work you're doing is obviously incredible. But I think from a parental point of view, obviously we need to understand the challenges of all the things that we've talked about, which we've done. But I think in order to get our children to come on board with us, they've also really got to start to understand some of these negative ramifications. What does health?
The medical.
Yeah.
What the medical stats are really deterring. Yeah.
Yeah. And what does healthy usage look like? Because you and I aren't talking about blanket bans and them being the worst thing in the world. We're talking about healthy effect.
Healthy phone use.
Yeah, absolutely. So final one then. We've talked We've talked about lots. We've obviously got children who are growing up with these devices, growing up with social media. What is your final message to parents today on the things that, after listening to this episode, that they can think about potentially doing, or where would you start if you were going through it again? What's your final bit of advice for all the parents listening today?
My final piece was actually just really set your household up on a phone routine, and you are the role models in the house. So if they think it's okay for you to be on their phones and you don't want them to be on their phones, then they're looking at you. And that phone routine is really, really key for their medical futures, for their psychological development, emotional development, physical development. We now see kids that are actually 4 to 5 years behind their emotional age. So if they're 16 years old, folks, we're working with athletes that are 2 to 3 years behind their emotional and psychological development of where they should be, because phones, at 16, the average child has been on a phone 14,000 hours. That means they're not with you, they're not with friends, and they're not outside. And this is where our childhood, Gord, played such a big role in shaping our mindset and our resilience, because we got to go out and be more independent, socialize, and run around, and we were exercising. So routines, the whole daily routine, is vital to how these kids grow up with a healthy outlook with phones.
Brilliant. Larissa, thank you so much for joining us. Good luck to the McClelland household, because I'm sure I'll go off this call today and I'll be implementing everything that's going on. Yeah, how long that will last, who knows, but I'll certainly go off here with some good intentions. So Larissa, thank you, and hopefully we'll see you again very soon.
Oh, sure. I'd love to.
Thank you for listening. Check us out at parentsinsport.co.uk.